weched o fai. Mae da fi un ymddiheuriad ar hyn o bryd, sef ymddiheuriad o Prifeithedwr Powys Emma, a fydd Eifion Evans yn sefyll mewn y lle Emma Palmer heddi. Felly diolch yn fawr ti am hynny, Eifion. Datgan diddordeb os na eisiau datgan diddordeb ar hyn o bryd. Fel sy'n arfer, os oes yna rhywbeth yn dod ar draws ni, tynwch yn sylw i beth bynnag, fel bod yn llun ei cofnod ni. Felly, ewn ni mlaen yn syth at cofnodion cyfarfod ytha, gath i gynnal ar yr 8fed ar 20 o Fawrth. Alla cael rhywun i dweud bod nhw'n gywir i ddechrau. Datgan cywirdeb. James, diolch yn fawr. Felly, pawb yn hapus gyda'r cofnodion? Bod ni'n mynd i bleidlais ar hynny. Gareth yn hapus? Na ni, mae mwy o frifdyn ni beth yna. Felly, unrhyw eitemau neu materion yn codi o'r cofnodion. Clive, come on in, please.
I'm ever so sorry, Chair, but my translation facilities are not working, so I'm trying to get them back. Steve, any ideas why it's not working?
So on the top line, Clive, there should have 3 ellipses.
Yeah, I got that.
Language and speech, about 5 down.
Yeah, and I've tested. I typed English into it, but I
Carry on's on her way over. She should be able to help.
Thank you so much. Chair, if you say something in Welsh, perhaps we could test the system.
Yeah, dim problem.
Yes, I've got it now. Thank you. Thank you.
IT problems.
You would think like I would be able to do this before with all the practice we've had, Chair. So apologies.
Yeah, well, something we call in cabinet in Cerrigon, picnic they call it. Problem in chair, not in computer, but I'll leave that to you. Na, diolch yn iawn, that is a problem. Felly, os nag os ni byd yn codi o'r cofnodion, ewn ni mlaen at eitem 4 ni, sef cynllun trafnidiaeth rhanbarthol. Hwn yn dogfen pwysig dros ben BSE mewn digwyddiad wythnos dwytha, ble ni siarad gyda grŵp ymgyrchu agor y llinell o Caerfyrddin i Aberystwyth, a ni gweithio nhw i ymateb i'r ymgynghoriad yna, achos bod e'n dechrau o ffensi'r gar a mynd trwy Cerrigon, mi fydd yn ei gwaniaeth i'r canolbarth yn gyfan gwbl beth bynnag. Felly fi'n gobeithio bod y wybodaeth na wedi'i rhedru nôl trwy'r ymgynghoriad. Felly, a trwy drosto chi, Ann fi'n cymryd, Ann sy'n mynd â ni trwy hwn, Ann Elias?
Yes, good afternoon, Chair. I'll take you through my report for you. Just bear with me while I get my right documents up. So many here on my page. The report is to outline the CJC has the responsibility for the delivery of the regional transport plan as required by the regulations and guidance set out by Welsh Government. Since your last meeting on the 28th of January, the draft regional transport plan went out to public consultation between the 3rd of February and the 4th of April, as required by the guidance. The outcome of the consultation and proposed amendments to the plan and appendices are contained in the consultation report. These are amendments were approved by the CJC Transport Subcommittee on the 29th of April. If I could just highlight to you the background in regard to the consultation report, if I can pick out some of the key findings for you rather than go through the whole document. The feedback provided us with respondents to a survey. I think we had 214 respondents to the survey and about 15 written representations. The highest performing objective was objective 3, to improve strategic transport connectivity within and beyond Mid Wales to support sustainable economic growth, freight and tourism. 74 of the respondents identified this to be relevant. The lowest performing objective was objective 5, to increase the levels of walking, cycling, wheeling within Mid Wales. 38% of those respondents identified that this was not relevant. The overall objectives within the plan performed relatively well, with more relevant responses than irrelevant across all the 8 objectives. The feedback on our policies, accessibility policies, strategic connectivity, environmental policies were the best performing policies within the plan. Walking and cycling and wheeling policies were identified as the most ineffective in addressing changes faced by Mid Wales. Of the 9 policy groups were deemed more ineffective than effective. And a lot of this points us to the need to improve behavioural change messaging coming from central government. The public's understanding of what is involved within these policies need to be enhanced and brought out to bring about the changes required. Feedback on the schemes within the Appendix 7 of the plan, public transport schemes were the most effective in addressing the challenges faced by Mid Wales, with 39 positive responses. Behavioural change schemes were the most ineffective at 94% responses. All 8 schemes type areas which we'd identified were deemed to be more ineffective than effective. The general feedback of scepticism towards the RTP, most respondents were sceptical about whether the schemes in the plan would be delivered in reality. Enhancements to bus services was a strong desire to enhance the reliability and affordability of bus services. Public transport integration, feedback indication that there should be more measures to improve bus and rail integration across the region. Rurality of Mid Wales, respondents expressed concerns particularly around walking, cycling and wheeling schemes and whether these were sustainable in rural areas. Feasibility around active travel targets questions were raised, but whether the promotion of walking and cycling and wheeling would achieve the desired outcomes. Scheme delivery, several respondents were concerned about funding routes for the proposed schemes set out in the Mid Wales Transport Plan. Schemes supported reservations about the transport plan could be implemented without a level of support needed from Welsh Government. Will we have the right levels of funding to achieve this outcome? The length and complexity of the plan, respondents were concerned about the fact that the plan was too lengthy and complex. Again, did we provide sufficient feedback on comments? I think that's the overall things that we're learning from the consultation. As a result, it was felt that there wasn't any significant changes required within the plan, but we obviously have set out within the consultation document the proposed changes that we were to make, which were accepted by the CJC Transport Subcommittee. Subsequent to our meeting of the subcommittee, we have received further correspondence on comments from Natural Resources Wales. They have highlighted the environmental effects of all transport interventions across the region. But this is a high-level document, and it is felt that the detailed schemes would require further environmental consequences assessment for each individual scheme, and therefore doesn't necessitate significant changes requirements to the plan. We have asked our consultants, WSP, to give full consideration to those late responses, and we would seek delegation to make any minor amendments to the strategic environmental assessment, should that be required, before sending to Welsh Government. So that's the report as it stands. Is there any questions in regard to the consultation and the consultation plan document?
Okay, diolch yn fawr chi, Ian. Any comments, unrhyw sylwadau ar hyn o bryd? Neu cwestiynau? Na, yr unig beth byddwn ni holi an o ran Cyfoeth Naturiol Cymru a'i sylwadau nhw, chwod o ran teithio llesol, bydd hwn yn glwm gyda'r ymgynghoriad, neu wedi bod yn glwm gyda'r ymgynghoriad un fi'n cymryd yn?
Yeah, they have been part of the consultation. It's just that we had a late response from them, so we weren't able to include it in the consultation plan document that's been presented to you today. We are taking a full evaluation. From what we've seen, there is nothing significant there that necessitates any major changes. There may be some slight wording amendments that we would recommend, and so we'd seek delegation to be able to do that on your behalf.
Felly yn dilyn sylwadau Cyfoeth Naturiol Cymru, chwod o ran yr coleg a bethau, dylen nhw neu ni fod yn hyrwyddo teithio llesol, bod yn cerdded neu beicio hefyd, felly bydde cerdded a beicio yn rhan o'r hyn byddwn ni moyn gyflawni o ran yr ymgynghoriad hefyd, San?
Indeed, it is, yes.
Good. Iawn, diolch yn fawr chi, Ian. Os na ragor o sylwadau wedyn ni. I chi, o ran penderfyniad, chi'n moyn penderfyniad wrthyn ni bod ni'n cynnwys sylwadau Cyfoeth Naturiol Cymru? Dwi'n hapus i gynnig hynny beth hwnna. Clive, do you want to come in on this one?
Thank you, Chair. As you have not seen or even had any description of the comments from Natural Sources, Chair, I would suggest that the committee gives delegated authority to Anne, in conjunction with yourself as chair, to approve any minor amendments. So the document in its existing format should be approved at the moment, subject to any delegated authority with Anne and in consultation with you, Brian, to make any amendments following consideration of the response from Natural Resources Wales.
Diolch yn fawr, Clive. Byddwn ni mwy na bodlon i wneud hynny. Yr unig beth byddwn ni holi bod y wybodaeth hynny'n cael ei rhannu gyda yr aelodau eraill hefyd, na'r unig beth, ond hapus i cymryd y cyfrifoldeb gyda Anne wedyn ni. O ran penderfyniadau, Clive, ni moyn cynigydd ag eilydd i hynny de?
Yes, please, Chair. And the proposal is on page 10, but it's, of course, subject to an additional requirement to give delegated authority to Anne and yourself to deal with the Natural Resources Wales response.
Scroll lawr i tudalen 10. Felly, I chi'n hapus gyda'r argymelliad? Are you happy with the recommendation? James, hapus?
Yep.
Yeah, we go for that then. Happy, Clive?
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, fel wedes i bod hwnna'n amodol yn ei bod unrhyw wybodaeth sy'n dod o Cyfoeth Naturiol Cymru yn cael ei rannu gyda gweddill enwi. So. Good, happy, Anne?
Yes, can I thank all the members for their input and contribution? Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Eifion fel prifeithredwr edrych.
Ie, diolch. A jyst os allai am funud cydnabod gwaith Anne yn benodol yn y gwaith yma, mae'n amlwg ar fin ymddeol oddi wrthon ni, a fydd hi'n golled enfawr i ni yn yr rhanbarth, ond Anne sydd wedi tynnu hwn i gyd at ei gilydd, a mae'n diolch ni'n enfawr iddi am y gwaith mae'n ei wneud.
Clywch iawn sôn am na Eifion. Gobeithio fi cyfle ni ddiolch yn ffurfiol felly o ran y gwaith mae Anne wedi wneud hefyd. Diolch yn fawr i chi, Anne. Diolch o'r iawn, felly ymlaen yn ni fyny at cynllun datblygu strategol, a fi'n cymryd gan taw Sarah Gross-Phillips sydd yn arwain ni trwy hwn. Sarah, am I right?
Yes, you're right, yeah.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, prawn da i ti.
Okay, pnawn da pawb. The last SDP update given was in October 24, where members will recall that the agreement then was that we would not undertake a delivery agreement by the end of the calendar year, as it wasn't, we weren't capable of doing so without a budget and other resources in place. It should be known that all 4 regions across Wales made the same decision, so we weren't in isolation. And that we, as the SDP subgroup and SDP lead, would continue to progress for further resource support for SDPs going forward in order for us to be able to make substantive progress. So since then, the main framework or work that we've been undertaking was Welsh Government consulted on a planning resilience consultation, which was about planning fees in the main and increasing planning fees. But part of the questions related to SDPs as well and regional working and planning skills hub. So as a region, we didn't submit an SDP response. We each submitted individual authority responses, but we worked together to ensure that our responses aligned in regards to those particular questions, where we expressed broad support for regional working and planning skills hubs, but with some caveats in regards to individual officers that work on development management, enforcement and local particular policy themes, feeling that those were best articulated at a local level rather than at a regional one, but on the main, broad support for regional working. And obviously for planning fees increases, but that was individual authorities to consider. So we also have worked collaboratively across the 4 regions to produce a letter to the Minister, Rebecca Evans, outlining concerns around SDPs, particularly in relation to resources, both staffing and financial, given the costs are expected to be in the region of approximately 3 million, and that will depend on particular regional circumstances. The lack of a SDP manual still being available. Obviously, the Welsh Government consulted on a draft in 2022, but since that time we haven't seen the consultation responses or a finalised draft. It was suggested this would be available in spring 2025, but we have since heard informally at meetings that that may well be spring 2026 before the manual is available. So we also expressed in that letter to Rebecca Evans that we would like more dialogue really as a region, but also across Wales with her about what SDPs can achieve and what they should be progressing really. So we haven't had a formal response to that letter that I'm aware of, or certainly that I've been copied into. So we await that really. We've also, following Emma's discussion with the ministers, been looking at regionally how we, I suppose in an ideal world, what an SDP might look like for the Mid Wales region and how we could reduce the cost burden and the resource burden of delivering one. So this wasn't in the context of the manual, which is quite clearly, or the draft manual, which is quite clearly laid out. This was more about sort of blue sky thinking, to use a term I dislike, but it did give us an opportunity to be a bit more broader in our thinking, and we've produced a paper of suggestions and ways forward. In effect, a sort of SDP light, if you like, which we feel could potentially be a bridge between a full SDP and no SDP. That is still at the sort of early days thinking with the leads across the area, but it is something that we intend to draft up into a more structured paper and take to the SDP subgroup in the coming months. So then we would be in a better position to discuss that with yourselves at the CJC once we knew what the SDP subgroup members thought. We have been notified from senior Welsh Government executives that there is some interest in considering different approaches before the manual is finalised. So we might be in a positive place to make some suggestions or recommendations, and that's what we're sort of quietly working on. But I would caveat this is without discussion formally with Welsh Government. So these really are suggestions and we don't know where they would go, but it's worth making them while there's still some room for manoeuvre, shall we say. So we also supported Carwyn's team with some web pages for the SDP and some text for that so that we can make the public a bit more aware. As I noted, the manual is delayed, we expect, and has been moved to publication to 2026. So we're now nearly 4 years away from the original draft. So in terms of where we are, Ceredigion Council LDP still remains on formal pause. We have met with Welsh Government around this area where they asked for updates, and we provided the rationale for that, and they were in support that they recognised why there were still good reasons to ensure that the LDP remained on pause, and those mainly relate to nutrients, the forthcoming marine nutrient release, and our housing numbers as a result of declining population. So there are still reasons to do that. In terms of Powys County Council, they are currently working on their LDP and the team are working towards the deposit stage at the end of this year. So the progress is going. And in terms of Bannau Brycheiniog, they're currently out for consultation on their delivery agreement, which is effectively the timetable of their planned for LDP. So they're undertaking that consultation. It would then need to go to the minister for sign off, and then they'd obviously have to enact their LDP. So in regards to progress for other regions, we are broadly at the same position as most other regions. In terms of the Southwest, no work has really progressed at this stage. They await the manual, they await formal resources, they still have concerns over budgets and staffing. And that seems to be the same position for the North in regards to the SDP. The only region that has made some progress is the Southeast. They have prepared a delivery agreement and they have consulted on that delivery agreement. They have not submitted it, as far as we are aware, to the Minister for sign-off, which would be the formal start of the SDP, because they still haven't made those decisions around budgets and staffing. So whilst they've got a delivery agreement, a time frame, a plan, they still don't have the resources to implement it. So it wouldn't be appropriate to send it off for sign-off. So moving forward here, our intentions at the moment are to progress with our ideas around the SDP, or ways in which to make savings or time savings, cost savings, etc., working regionally with our partners, and then to, subject to the SDP subgroup's approval, potentially reach out to Welsh Government to see whether or not there would be any support for this before any manual's published, as we obviously, once the manual is published, we're beholden to follow it. So we intend to do that as a subgroup, and also we're aware that there has been some resources potentially put forward to CJCs in order to support further work, and I'm happy to have a conversation about what might be beneficial in the short term in terms of interim work and a regional basis to progress SDP work, should that be required. So that's broadly where we are. We await further information, is the reality, from the Minister, and in the interim we're trying to come up with local solutions to local problems that we could progress and see where we get.
Diolch yn fawr ti, Sarah. Ar lafar o'r ddyletswydd felly sy'n penderfyniad i wneud beth bynnag. Ond cwbl bethau da fi, rhywbeth sydd falle sy'n mynd i effeithio Ceredigion, fi yw'r Marine SSC. Felly beth yw'r diweddarad ar hwnnw, achos mi fydd yn cael effaith yn dwyol, byddwn ni'n meddwl, ar Ceredigion, ond byddwn ni'n gwneud i'r SDP hefyd byddwn ni'n gweud o ran hynny. Beth yw'r amserlen hefyd sy'n disgwyliedig, achos blwyddyn nesaf mae dan ni etholiadau, os fydd yna plaid arall yn rhedeg yn ein arwain y Senedd, wedi hwnna'n meddwl bod y gwaith hyn mynd i fod yn ofer, achos mae yna tipyn o wrthynebedd i'r cydbwyllgorau beth bynnag. Felly, cwbl o gwestiynau yna, rhywbeth arall, dwi ddim yn siŵr o ran amserlen Powys, o ran Parc Cenedlaethol newydd falle yng Ngogledd y Sir. Felly, a bydd eisiau mewnbwn oddi wrth y Parc Cenedlaethol newydd hynny mewn i'r SDP hefyd. 3 cwestiwn yna, beth bynnag, Sarah. Dwi'n dwto bod ateb da ti pob un, ond falle mae werth roi sylw nhw. Falle.
Yes, no problem. I'm afraid, Chair, I can't give you a timeline for the Marine SAC release. I've been told repeatedly for 18 months it will be the next spring or the next autumn or whatever, and that hasn't, materialized. I do have some sense that it will be forthcoming quite soon, because there's more momentum in any meeting I'm at and there's more discussion over it. NRW have promised that they will give a heads up to local authorities in advance of publication date. I certainly haven't had that, so that means I hope it's not in the next month or two. But I wouldn't, if I was a betting man, I'd say, it will most likely be this year. And certainly we are advised to make sure that agents, applicants, any serious house builders, they know this, and we are doing that in all our work with them. The second question in relation to is it all for nothing? Yes, it's political, but because it's not based on party, it's EU legislation. It's got to come out at some point, and how it will affect that, it remains to be seen. But I don't think they're delaying. But I think what they've decided to do effectively is remove any catchments that have a English and Welsh element, and only release data on Welsh-based catchments. So that effectively removes the River Severn catchment out of the data release, which will take away the main issue for Cardiff and Newport. So that's a more palatable option, I think, in terms of releasing the data, because again, we're back to more rural areas being impacted. So that's why I do expect the release to be fairly shortly. But in terms of the River Severn and the shared catchments, I suspect if I worked at NRW, I'd leave that as long as possible before I released it, because of the impact on our urban centres in Wales. But that's not my decision to make, that's a guess. In terms of a new national park, yes, if and when a new national park is, don't know what the correct term is, ratified, then they would need a seat at the table in terms of the CJC, because it does take up quite a large part of the upper elements of Powys. And then we would obviously be 2 parks, 2 authorities. So we need to think about, how that goes forward. At the moment, it's not more than a consultation. I don't think they've moved those stages forward. And as far as I know, the legislative programme is quite tight at Welsh Government for the election, so it'd be difficult for them to sort of progress that quickly. But yes, you're right. When a new national park comes into force, then that will be another player at the table of the SDP.
Okay, diolch yn fawr, Sarah. James, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, and Sarah may not be able to answer this question for more than one reason. In the discussions with NRW over the data release of the SACs, I mean, I'm relieved to hear about the 7, because although, yes, the biggest impact would have been on Cardiff, Newport and the South Wales area, of course, it would have had an impact from Montgomeryshire and the north of Powys as well, because that's where the 7 comes from. So that's a relief. But in terms of the Cardigan Bay issue, do you have any sense that NRW are factoring in socio-economic consequences of any decisions? Then, because the reason I ask the question is because the recent decision they've made in relation to the Usk and the Monmouthshire and Brecon Canal was quite clear from the response from NRW, was that as far as they're concerned, those issues are not pertinent, they're not germane, that the issues are around environmental protection and that's it, full stop. And it seemed to me that's very unhelpful, but if that's the way they see it, that's the way they see it. So I just wondered if there's any, I mean, they acknowledged that there would be significant socioeconomic consequences, but yet didn't appear to have had any influence on the decision. So do you get any sense that is still the line that they're running?
Yes, that is the line that they occupy. They are looking at this from a marine monitoring point of view, and their data release will be whether or not we are passing or failing our targets. The impact of that pass or fail seems to not factor in their decision making, because obviously if we are failing, and I would expect that we are, then development will grind to a halt in other areas of Ceredigion and certainly Cardigan Bay, all the counties that align around that. Their focus is not on how that has an economic or socio-economic benefit or negative on the population. They're simply, as far as they're concerned, issuing guidance as to whether or not we've passed or failed the targets, and what that means in terms of what applications we can approve. So yes, it is an issue, and when it is released, I do expect it to have quite a significant impact across the county. That being said, we are in a much better place to manage that impact than we were the first time round with phosphates. We didn't really have a plan of action. We didn't know what the next steps should be. We didn't understand the issue. We do now. We've got a team in place that has greater expertise, and I expect in terms of marine SAC guidance, we'll probably be quite a lead authority across the Cardigan Bay region, because we've already been through this once. We know what the steps are. And, even in terms of monitoring, we're hoping in the next few weeks to install our own marine monitors so that we have a database on which we can evaluate their evidence. So we are in a stronger position. But no, you're absolutely right. Their focus is on whether we've passed or failed an environmental target, not what the impact of that decision is.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Diolch yn fawr, James. Oes na rwy'n arall a cwestiwn neu sylwadau? Na, felly diolch yn fawr, Sarah. Ddim penderfyniad i wneud, ond keep us in the loop unwaith, Sarah. Okay. Diolch yn iawn. Felly nesa, eitem 6 yn prospectws y cydbwyllgor corfforedig Ddim yn siŵr os o Carwyn neu Diana sy'n mynd yn ei trwy hwn.
I'm happy to take you through this, Chair.
Yeah, carry on, diolch o'r Diana.
Okay, so the Mid Wales Corporate Joint Committee Partnership Manifesto really started with trying to work with Welsh Government on how our corporate joint committee needs to work in the best way possible for ourselves. And I think there's been this continual push to be set up the same as the other corporate joint committees. And what we were trying to put together was a manifesto that explained why we want to work together in the way we are at the moment, and that any changes in the way we work really need to add value and help improve the lives of people living in Mid Wales, not just to meet the to be the same as everybody else. It needs to work for us and the way it needs to work. So we've actually put together a high level manifesto to say why we're going to work together, why we also have the partners in Banau Brycheiniog, and what it means to our region in terms of our vision for developing the region and how we can do that through joint strategy but local delivery. So I'm hoping the strategy sets out what really is the vision of yourselves over time that we've all talked about but never had written down on a piece of paper. So that's what we've tried to do. And then within the structure to deliver, that's really just reflecting the structure we have at the moment and just kind of formalising that in the document to make sure that we are very clear about how we're structured and how we're going to work together. And that we're working through in-kind contributions really from both partnerships so that we can coordinate those joint responsibilities without putting that financial burden onto the local authorities to duplicate any teams or functions. So I'm happy to take any questions, but this is for us to sign off today. And I think the proposal was for Emma as the Chief Executive to send that across to Welsh Government as kind of like our stance at the moment, and to say that we will continue to work and look at things as they change in the future.
Okay, diolch o'r Diana. Yr her sydd gyda ni yn y canolbarth yw, ni'n partneriaeth bach, mae llai adnoddau gyda ni, a'r un staff sydd gyda ni really, o ran fargen dwf o popeth, felly o'r y teg mae staff yn ei gwaith ardderchog, ond mae eisiau Llywodraeth Cymru cydnabod yr heriau sydd gyda ni o ran capacity a'r elfen ariannol hefyd, ond jyst sylwadau dwy wastad yn codi ble allai beth bynnag. James, anything you want to give your opinion?
No, Chair, I think it's a good document. It sets out the position really well, and I mean, it's an uncomfortable. It's a strange thing, isn't it, to have a regional committee comprised of two people, which is effectively what it is for most things, and three when it involves planning. But it's I just can't see. I mean, there's a democratic issue, isn't there, around that? And I think one of the strongest arguments against creating, a sort of full-blown CJC style approach, particularly that they're developing down in the southeast of Wales, where it makes much more sense, where you've got 10 local authorities. You can understand them doing it there. That makes a lot of sense. But for us, it just would be a nonsense, and I think there needs to be a degree of realism at Welsh Government level about the fact that you need I mean, they did it, to be fair to Welsh Government, they allowed a variable geometry to this. They allowed the regions and local authorities within them to make their own way on this. And I think that they should respect that right. And I'm sure that I very much hope that they will. And I think this strikes the right balance, doesn't it? It embeds our cooperation in a way which would be difficult to undo for any future administrations in either county, should they be so minded. Which is a good thing, because I think it's really important that is put set in stone in that respect. But it doesn't go over the top in creating unnecessary bureaucratic structures. So I think it's fine, absolutely fine.
Ie, na, diolch yn fawr, James. Fy'n yr un farn. Dwi'n hapus i arwyddo hwn off beth bynnag. A fi cymryd gan y tawl bod chi hefyd. Felly, gyda hynny, o'i red, just o ran troloiw, James, myself, happy, Clive, that this goes forward. And then
Yes, Chair.
Avion will forward this as Chief Exec for now anyway. Well, that's how we'll work.
Wel, fi ddim yn danfon ymlaen fel ar hyn o bryd fel y prif swyddog sy'n trosolwg, ond mae'n rhaid fi cydnabod gwaith Dian ar y dogfen yma hefyd. Mae Dian wedi cael galed iawn ar hwn yn y cefndir. Mae fi'n ddiolchgar dros ben iddi am y gwaith dros cyfnod byr iawn amser gath i'n neud ond mae'n sicr yn mynd i'n rhoi'n safiad ni'n glir iawn i Llywodraeth Cymru. Mae wedi rhoi gwybod i Llywodraeth Cymru'n barod bod yna ddogfen drafft gyda ni, a unwaith i chi'n cymryd rwy o fe heddi nawr, wedyn byddwn ni'n gallu sicrhau bod hwnna'n cael ei ddanfon atyn nhw wedyn.
Okay. Yeah, diolch yn fawr ti, Iwan. Sim, as with that, and Diane, thank you for your input into this anyway. So, Clive, are you happy that James himself?
Yes, Chair. Happy to decide. Thank you very much.
Yeah, diolch Diane, diolch James. Felly mlaen i'r eitem nesaf nawr. Alright, mae'n dangos ar ran eitem 7 fi gohebiaeth o ran yr ysgrifennydd cabinet. Ond Carwyn, ti sy'n ymwneud ar hwn?
Na, sy'n credu, jyst gwybodaeth dwi'n meddwl ydi o.
Okay.
Gallai ddiweddaru'n gyffredinol, llythyr gyn Llywodraeth Cymru fel Jane Bryant fel yr ysgrifennydd cabinet Llywodraeth leol a tai wedi sgrifennu fo i'r 4 cydbwyllgor corfforedig dros Gymru. A llythyr cyffredinol i ddeud fod yr amser yn gywir rwan i symud y CJCs yn ei blaenau. Yn rhan o be oedd James Arweinydd Powys yn gyfeiriad gynnar o'n statws a pwrpas y CJCs wrth symud yn ei blaenau. Dwi'n credu bod trafodaeth fori arweinydd ydych chi'n rhan o hwnnw fo. Lle fod James hefyd felly wedi cael gwahoddiad. Mae'r 3 ysgrifennydd cabinet Jane Bryant, Rebecca Evans a Ken Skates, dwi'n credu, dwi'n credu bod o dim ddehiro, yn cyfarfod efo arweinyddion Llywodraeth leol i ddiweddaru, dwi'n meddwl, a cael trafodaeth ar ddyfodol y CJCs yn ei gyfanrwydd. Ond mi allai rei bach mwy o fanylder ond ochr economi yn fy eitem nesaf, dwi'n credu llythyr gwybodaeth ydy'r eitem yma yn eitem 7.
Okay, diolch yn fawr ti, Carwyn. Sylwadau, James, hapus bod ni'n derbyn y llythyr?
Yes, but I also think we should note it actually confirms really the approach that we're taking. There's a sentence there that says that they're designed to take a flexible, they're designed with flexibility in mind, and that the governance arrangement should be proportionate. And I think that's what we've achieved. Yeah. So I can't see there's anything that we're doing here that should run counter to Welsh Government's policy on this, really. Yeah. Although the suggestion might be otherwise, but not. I think the evidence is clear that we're not.
Yeah, na, diolch yn fawr, James. Yeah, na. Mae lle bydd wrth nodi o lle sylwadau, James. Mae fe jyst yn cryfhau hwn yn beth bynnag, felly. Yeah. Happy to move forward on this, Clive?
Yes, thank you.
Good, diolch o'r ti yna, Carwyn. A'r eitem nesaf sydd gyda ti wedyn ni hefyd, Carwyn?
Ie, so diweddariad byr iawn. Mae'r adroddiad yma yn adroddiad ydych chi wedi derbyn o blaen fel rhan o Bwrdd Tyfu Canolbarth Cymru, adroddiad gwybodaeth i'r fforwm yma. Ond mi allaf gadarnhau ers cyfarfod dwytha Bwrdd Tyfu Canolbarth Cymru gafon ni lawnsiad llwyddiannus iawn draw yn Abermiwl yn Mhowys o'r gronfa buddsoddi eiddo masnachol, Mid Wales Property Investment Fund o'r Fargen Dwf. Wythnos dwytha gafon ni lot o busnesau yn mynychu a oeddwn ni'n packed out a ddweud i wir. So, yr unig bryder sgynnau fanna fel swyddog ydy falle fod fwy o ofyn ar y gronfa na sydd gyda ni o ran arian, a fod o'n onest, ond dwi'n credu bod hynny'n beth da ac yn beth cadarnhaol, ac dwi'n credu'r neges eitha adeiladol oedd gynna ni yn y cyfarfod yn y lawnsiad oedd, os oes na ofyn amdano fo, ac os ydy'n cronfa llwyddiannus, sy'n dod o allbynna, wel, dwi'n siŵr byddech chi fel bwrdd maes o law yn gyda diddordeb mewn edrych ar opsiynau rei fwy o arian fewn yn oed dyfodol neu fel Llywodraeth Cymru yn rei fwy o arian fewn iddo fo. So o ran y fargen dwf, pethau'n symud yn ei blaena, yn amlwg, dyn ni wedi symud ymlaen efo cam cyntaf Co Melan fel prosiect yma, yr ail gam rwan, yr phase 2 yn agosau hefyd. So bydd y bwrdd tyfu canolbarth Cymru yn derbyn diweddariad ar hwnnw maes o law. A dyn ni hefyd yn gwneud cynnydd da hefyd o ran prosiect CAT a'r brifysgol hefyd. So bydd ddiweddariadau pellach mwy manwl i chi maes o law ar hynny yn y bwrdd tyfu canolbarth Cymru. Tu hwnt i'r fargen dwf a jyst yn gyffredinol rownd llesiant yr economaidd neu'r strand yma ran y CJC. Fel be o'n i'n dweud yn gynharach, mae yna drafodaethau ar y gweill rwan rhwng Llywodraeth Cymru a sawl sydd yr aelod rownd be di dyfodol y CJC, beth yw eu deheuadau nhw rownd y bit economi o'r CJC. Mi oedd na prospectus yn cael ei ddatblygu gyda Llywodraeth Cymru ar gyfer y CJCs, ond dwi ar ddall mae'r prospectus ddim yn symud ymlaen ar hyn o bryd, gan fod adolygiad o'r y spending review o Llywodraeth Prydain yn dod i gasgliad mis nesaf rwan ar yr 11 o Fehefin. O be dwi'n ddarllen o hynny, dwi'n credu bydd y gweision sifil a'r gweinidogion fel y cyfryw eisiau gweld lle mae'r Llywodraeth Brydeinig yn mynd i fod rownd ariannu y dyfodol. Mae'n amlwg, maen nhw eisiau gwybod be fydd cyllideba'r dyfodol. Mae'r gwaith yma Rachel Reeves fel y cynghellor presennol wedi osod mewn lle ar ôl yr datganiad y Gwanwyn dwytha yn dod i ben rwan yn mis Mehefin. So bydd yna bach mwy o syniad gyda ni'n mis Mehefin, dwi'n credu o ran be dyn ni'n ddelio fo'n symud yn ei ymlaen. Hefyd o ran Llywodraeth Prydain ag yn perspektif Lloegr a Llywodraeth leol yn Lloegr o ran yr economi, bydd yna bach mwy o syniad o sut mae y Llywodraeth Lafur yn Lloegr eisiau dyrannu arian dyfodol, arian datblygu economaidd yn y dyfodol i gynghora lleol ar awdurdodau gyfunol neu'r combined authorities yn Lloegr. Felly dwi'n credu bydd yna drafodaethau pellach wedyn gyda ni yma yng Nghymru sut mae dyrannu'r arian o fewn cyd-destun Cymru. Nawr yn amlwg o trafodaethau dyn ni'n gael ar hyn o bryd ar lefel swyddogion ac hefyd bydech chi fel arweinyddion wedi derbyn awgrymiadau gan aelodau cabinet yn hanesyddol ydy mae'r deheuad gan Llywodraeth Cymru oedd yr arian yn mynd fewn i'r cydbwyllgor corfforedig fewn i'r CJC, ond yn amlwg dydy Llywodraeth Prydain heb gadarnhau na dyna di'r ffordd wneud pethau weithio ac mae yna sawl ffordd all pethau weithio. Felly eto, mae hwnna'n atgyfnerthu'r pwyntiau ydych chi wedi gwneud fel cadeiriddion ar y cyd o rownd y manifesto sydd ni'n delio fo hwn ydy cymryd i fel ddaw, gweld lle mae'r arian yn dod o, beth yw'r amodau, ond dal i wthio'n blaenoriaethau ni a ffordd ni'n gweithredu ar hyn o bryd. Ond sgrym diweddariad pellach a diweddariad ar lafar di o ran mae trafodaethau dal ar y gweill rili a byddwn ni'n diweddaru pan bydd yna rhywbeth bach mwy concret rownd ffordd ni'n gwybod mae pethau'n mynd yn y dyfodol.
Na, diolch o'r di, Carwyn. Mae'r tipyn o wybodaeth yn yr atodiad beth yna gewd, felly diolch yn rownd i am y diweddariad ar y lawr yna. Unrhyw sylwadau neu cwestiynau? Na, dim byd. Felly, diolch o'r ti am hynny hefyd. A dyna ni wedi cyrraedd diwedd yr prif eitemau. Felly, os yna unrhyw fusnes arall wna'n drafod, neb wedi cysylltu gyda i o flaen llaw beth bynnag, ond hapus i chi roi sylwadau. Na, dim byd. Felly bydd y cyfarfod nesaf ar y 4 ar 10 o'r Ffennaf. Gareth, Brown Dagger, diolch yn mynd.
Yeah, just apologies, Chair, for my lateness. I was delivering a dementia awareness session that overran, so I was tied up at work.
Yeah, no worries. Na, diolch o'r am na, Gareth. Gwerthfawrogi bod chi'n i'r amser ar y diwedd. Felly, cyfarfod nesaf 4 ar 10 o'r Ffennaf. Ond yw e'n debygol mi fyddwn ni'n gwneud penderfyniadau yn y cyfarfod hynny? Clive, would you know the sort of forward work program for that meeting?
I think Carwyn or Diane probably have a better update than me, Chair.
Okay. Diane, then, please.
Yeah, the 14th of July is down as our AGM meeting, so it'll probably be more report, looking back for information rather than decision making.
Okay. Ie, dim problem. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Good, felly os nag os dim byd arall, diolch yn fawr i chi am eich presenoldeb eich mewnbwn fan hyn heddi, a na i dymuno prawn da i chi. Felly, hwyl fawr i chi gyd.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody.
Bye bye. Hwyl.